On Thursday, Big Island Video News presented our first report on the proposed water management area designation for the Keauhou Aquifer. It featured a lengthy February 4th presentation by the State Water Commission to the Hawaii County Council Planning Committee. After the presentation, the Deputy Director for the State Commission on Water Resource Management discussed the pending petition with the council members.
This is really looking ahead 15 or 20 years. And the problem is that once you create infrastructure, once you create reliance on wells, that use is pretty much established, even if legally it could be drawn back some. So what you're really looking at is uses that start to approach an asymptotic curve. And, as you get closer and closer to that limit, your choices get narrower about what you can do in the future. And one of the reasons for the water code designation process is to try to get ahead of that curve so you actually have all the different aspects on the table when you think about it. One of the problems that happens, just as a practical matter, is that public projects often come in late. They take a long time to plan, a long time to get financing. So, for example, if you want to put a school in someplace, the private sector can act very quickly, and they do. And they know where they want to go, and they get their wells and get their financing, and they start to do things. But public projects often have a 10, 15-year lag, and if you need to put in a well to take care of a school, for example, in a simple model, you may find that the water in that area isn't available anymore. And so therefore you have to go someplace further to get that water, or deeper. And so this is a method, this designation process, of trying to bring all the different aspects to the table. Hawaiian Homes, for example, for a very long time, has not really stepped up to say where they need water, how much, and where. They're starting to remedy that, but they've been very slow. And as a result, they actually have a first claim on water on state lands as a result of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act and as a result of the Admissions Act and the state constitution. But they're going to find themselves in a position where they want to do a homestead in an urban area and they don't have water. So we need to have a sort of a longer time frame to see what are all the pieces that are coming at you and what do you want to do about future agriculture in 20 years from now. If you don't do something to put that part of the puzzle in the map, then it gets lost. And that's why it's important that this be a process that looks much further ahead than just, the next CIP budget, the next planning cycle. You're basically starting to make decisions that are going to be in there essentially for a very, very long time. Part of the other issues that maybe you haven't seen as much on this island, but certainly on Oahu, is that Pearl Harbor, for example, was overpumped for a very long time. It's not now because sugar's largely gone. But if you get an industry or you get something that overdraws an area, it's very hard then to wind that back.
Deputy Director Bill Tam also spoke about the troubling trend in the equation, climate change.
The rainfall that's hitting the islands, mostly on the windward side, is getting, there's less rainfall. And that's due to a lot of different factors involving sort of the shrinking of the thickness of the clouds that hit the islands. For a variety of temperature reasons, those clouds, which bring that moisture on the windward sides, is getting thinner. And the indication is that in the last 20 to 30 years, the aggregate rainfall hitting the islands has declined by 10 to 12%. The USGS study of 2011 suggested that the stream flows in the last 80 years are down over 20%. And those trends appear to be continuing. There's also evidence that the climate change impact on the distribution of rainfall is going to impact us because the leeward sides are going to get drier. We're going to have, even if we had the same amount of rain, if it comes in less frequent but higher rain events, that water just runs off in the ocean. It doesn't percolate down. Ideally, from a recharge point of view, you want a much more even distribution and much more even rainfall patterns so it percolates down through the ground. If you get a few large storms, that water runs off, aside from just taking a silt out on the reef, it won't recharge. And so the kinds of risks we're starting to look at are different in nature than what we've had in the past.
Some say that designation of this groundwater management area is not urgent. We disagree.
From the beginning, the Mokuloa group of the Sierra Club was one of the first organizations to come out in favor of the water management area designation. Here is Deborah Ward speaking at the February 4th Council Planning Committee hearing.
The Water Use Development Plan for the County of Hawaii states that the demand for water for permitted uses within the planning zone is twice the amount available for the aquifer at Keoho, and this is why we're concerned. Without staff support and management of the resource, shortages of public potable water, expensive desalination, and serious and irreversible consequences to precious cultural and natural resources could and likely will result. We're concerned that the development and use of wells within the high-level aquifer to support the Malka projects that have been proposed may affect the availability of groundwater that supports the fish ponds, the wetlands, and the ankyline ponds downslope. The ankyline ponds support endemic and native flora and fauna that depend on brackish groundwater, and these coral reef ecosystems, as well as the pools, ponds, and wetlands, are all dependent on the fresh water in the basal lens and perched aquifers. Withdrawals from the high-level aquifer could affect the basal lens, decreasing water levels and increasing salinity at those sites. A study that was conducted back in 1999 showed by Mr. Aoki and others showed that the groundwater flux to the coast along the Koloko-Honokohau National Historic Park could decrease by 50% if permits within the zones were maximized. And water levels throughout the national park have already dropped by almost half a foot since 1978 in response to modest levels of withdrawal. Seawater intrusion into the local aquifers would be irreversible and significant long-term impact to the local ecosystems and groundwater use.